Hello,
Hey.
everybody, and welcome back to the Pediatric Speech Sister Show. I am so thankful to have Sheila Grimes. She also goes by the Inner Uplifter. The reason why I brought her here on the show is because we actually connected outside of the education space. It was actually part of the coaching program that I signed up for, Higher Self Institute. And Sheila, you mentioned something in the chat box about education. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, this is exactly someone who I want to connect with. And so when I was at the American Peace Convention in Boston, I got to meet you and it was just so lovely and we got to have nice deep conversations. So I am just so thankful that you are on the show. Now, so when we connected though, I had no idea that I didn't know what to expect. But when you came to me and said, I want to talk about psychological safety in Black women, I'm like, wow, that's a topic that sadly I don't really know much about. I mean, of course, as a Black woman, I do, but it's not something that's just around, not education that's around. So I would love to have you here on the show. Many of us work with Black women as colleagues, because I think I told you some trauma I've had in the workplace, and also Black girls. We work with Black girls all the time. And so anything that healthcare providers and educators can learn from you would be amazing. So I'm just so thankful that you're here.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here with you on this wonderful weather changing day.
Yes, yes. And is it warm in Boston? I hate to bring up the weather, but I just have to ask.
It's getting there. It's getting there. I think the last few days I've seen some consistency. I'm still one that be like, all right, we're still waiting to see. The jury's out to see if you're gonna backslide to some cold weather.
You're tough. You're very tough. So I hope you don't mind. I'm going to go ahead and read your bio and then we can get into the nitty gritty of our conversation
All
today.
right, all right.
All right. So Tiella Grimes is a dynamic professional embodying the roles of a strategy consultant, spiritual transformational coach, empowerment, that's empowerment speaker, and spoken word alchemist. Her life's motto, I will never compromise my feelings. That's equivalent to denying the truth. And I will never deny myself that. It reflects her unwavering commitment to authenticity. Tiela's career trajectory is marked by a rich background in media, education, and urban youth development, with over 2 decades of experience in serving youth of color in Boston. Tiela is the driving force behind In Her Uplifting Consulting, a mission driven business dedicated to fostering healing, uplifting humanity, and cultivating harmony. She offers customized coaching programs and training that empower individuals on their personal journeys of inner transformation. Wow. Is there anything that you would like to add to this lovely bio?
So I'm smiling and laughing because words just sound so different when you hear it out loud. No, but it's inner uplift. It's just like inner. The H just stands for healing, humanity, and harmony. And so it's the way it plays. Everybody's like, it's for girls. And I'm like, it's for everybody, humans. But my
Mhm.
work is centered around women and girls and Black and brown youth.
Thank you for being here. Now, when we met, you did tell me specifically why you chose inner, like INN. Well, there's in her, but also the inner uplifter rather than anything else. Can you kind of explain that?
Yeah. I consider myself a seeker. And when I say that, I mean that I strive to seek for the truth. And I'm learning that it starts with having a very open and honest, transparent relationship with self. I think when we are growing up, we are conditioned, socialized based on who's around us from parents, families. We get into the world, we have teachers, we have friends, we have peers, we have all of these different beautiful views of people who might see us differently than we get to see or get to know ourselves. And so the inner uplift is strongly important in being able to figure out what's your healing process. How do you see your humanity and within yourself, and how do you cultivate the harmony, inner harmony, that is needed to operate with others. I think we do come from a world that stems to focus on other people. And I'm at the point where I need to figure out me. And I can't do that through other people in the way that I genuinely and authentically need to get to the root of who I am.
Wow. I think that we can definitely all learn from that because, the biggest thing that comes to my mind is definitely as women, we tend to give and pour and give and pour in spite or really at the expense of our own selves. So let me go ahead and ask you this. Can you tell us a little bit about your why? What lights you up?
What lights me up is what I say every day when I wake up, before my feet touch the ground, as my eyes open. It's just thank you, God, for another day to serve according to your purpose and will for my life. Whatever that is, however I need to do it in that way, um, please allow me to do it in the most kindest, humblest, harmonic way as possible, where I'm not causing harm to others, but I'm serving your will. So my why really stems on having that type of relationship with the most high, the higher power, however you define it for yourself. Everybody is on a different journey, religious, spiritual, whichever. But for me, my why stems from the power that I get every day. And I'm not just living a life just to live a life. I'm living a life because I'm here to do something impactful spiritually.
And so you have your master's in education, correct?
I do.
So how would you say that your sole purpose ties into your studies in education?
So I designed my master's degree
Okay.
at Leslie University in media education and urban youth development. And so even going into the program, I came with my community. I came with the idea of the experiences that I went through, and the young people that I work with, that our stories, our experiences do not necessarily get platformed in a way to get looked at and get talked about in a way that I'm like, oh, I can get a whole degree in this and really like have the support to really build around what would it look like for someone that comes from the community of Dorchester, and there's so many stereotypes about being from a Black person from an urban community. And so I really wanted to not, how do I say, not necessarily separate myself. I never want to forget where I come from, because where I come from pours into how I moving forward. So I can either do the same things, or I can look at those experiences that are now memories and pull the learnings from them, and then begin to apply what I feel God is calling me to do to address some of those things that I may have navigated, and what space needs to be created for the generation coming up.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thank you. It seems like you are almost designed to do a lot of your work here in the United States. Uh,
Who knows?
Yeah, right, right. Yeah, I'm very excited to see where your journey takes you. So you shared a couple of articles with me, and I'm gonna read the title. So one of them is "When I think of Black girls, I think of opportunities. Black
Mm.
girls' identity development and the protective role of parental socialization in educational settings." Whew. So, can you tell me a little bit about this article and your points, your favorite points from this article?
Yeah, I can't, just the title. Just even looking at when I think of Black girls, I think of opportunities. My work from grad school was centered around looking at Black women voices, and really looking at the history of Black women voices and how the stories were told. This article particularly stood out to me because I think about my experience in school. I'm working with young women in schools, and I'm hearing a lot of not necessarily narrative changes, but the experiences that might be getting worse or not being shown enough light into thinking about how I call it the school to prison pipeline. So there's this thing called the school to prison pipeline. And what is that? It's you're going to school, and there's these different policies, regulations that are are formed
Mhm.
that may be discriminatory against certain bodies in a school setting, right?
Yeah.
So whether, for example, I've had Black young ladies share, being, sent to detention or getting in trouble because their shorts are too short, versus they have a white peer who has shorter shorts than them, but no one has said anything to them at all. But they're
Mhm.
getting a lot of this treatment that also objectifies their bodies. And so there's a whole line of looking at race and gender, and thinking about how, what is happening in educational settings for Black girls. What are their experiences? How are their stories being heard, told? When they're telling it, how is it being received? Is it, oh, you're nagging, you're being the problem? If it's always centered on, if you are advocating for yourself as a Black girl and you are the problem, that is a problem in itself. So that was one of the things,
Mhm.
thinking about the experiences of discrimination and microaggressions that Black girls go through. This was something that stood out for me in this. And also kind of thinking about the role of parents, in thinking about positive development. I want to preface this respectfully, that there's generational differences. And
Mm.
there are some shifts that I noticeably see, and I'm going to use I statements and make sure I reserve my judgment for me. I am seeing a concern with how we're building up, how we're building our young people up. What is the positive reinforcement that is being poured into, from the culture space of who you are? And I say that to say, sorry, the feeling that comes up is there is this sense of Black girl power and like all of these great, beautiful things. I
Mhm.
am concerned about how much are we building from the internal perspective as far as the external stuff. So we can look cute, be good, have our bad days, be all beautiful, but what's really happening? How are we pouring in internally? How are we creating spaces, for both parents and children to be poured in differently? Because media messages and how it might say to be positive and do these different things, and there might be some outdated historical ways that we may have been pouring into that worked at one point in time, but we might need to revise. We might need to look at something different and infuse something new in how do we ensure that our, especially in this context, Black girls are feeling good about themselves and their bodies as a whole, as opposed to some of the things that I'm seeing
Mm.
is very, if you don't like it, go fix it.
Yeah.
And there's an empowerment there, yes. But
Mm.
there is also a conversation that I feel needs to be had around the mental and emotional pouring intos that go into making a decision like that, where you're going to live with for the rest of your life. And are you going to be content after the first one, or do you need a second one? So that's just me branching off and like just thinking about some of the, when this article comes up, it really makes me take a trajectory around like education, yourself, but what are the things that are being poured? Education could also be influenced by media messages and how politics play a role in that. So all of these different things kind of come together in an intersection. So that's what
Mhm.
the passion just came up like, no, I want to hear like, yes, the role of parents. Yes, we're empowering. And I also have questions on what that looks like, and how we're doing it.
Mhm. And so what questions would you say have come up for you and what that looks like and
Must,
how we're doing it?
a simple question, respectfully, and this, people might not even think about it. What is the role in media, in social media,
Mhm.
in building up your identity, in building up your self-esteem, in thinking about how do parents parent? Respectfully, I am not a parent, so I'm not going to sit here and speak from expertise. What
Mhm.
I do understand and realize, we're in a different generation of parents who have access to different information, different than previous generations. So maybe we're not waiting for 2020 to come on at 8 o'clock with a special, with a special on education and young people or whatever. But
Right.
we're having more opportunities where experts do, and people who can claim they're experts respectfully can
Mm.
put themselves in a position, create a page, share information, share stuff, messages. And are we considering the messenger before the message, right? Are we considering, is it for hype? Because now, we're doing a lot of things for numbers and algorithms. Or is it really genuinely creating a conversation and creating spaces for people to really kind of challenge some things like, I do, I haven't really been to the library recently, but I have watched a lot of reality TV, and I didn't really think about some of the television shows I was watching and some of the things that I may be absorbing from this, and how I may be acting that out in my life based on what I'm perceiving this to be. And as simple there, if I strip media away, even just thinking about what are some of the messages I received growing up from my parents? And in a generational context, we have the lost generation. Then it was this, we have more before that, but I start with the lost generation, the silent generation, baby boomers, Gen X, millennials, Gen Z,
Mhm.
Alpha, right? If we think
Mm.
about experiences and what you are navigating during those times, it impacts your parenting differently. And so, as a millennial, well, we went to college and you got kids and you got college debt and you got to have a house and you got to, how does that play differently than if you're coming out of the civil rights era, if you're coming out
Mhm.
of the Jim Crow period, if you're coming out of the Great Depression, if you're coming from the Great Migration? These are different historical things that impact how parents parent. So I just want to have the question and dialogue. If you are a parent or if you are just navigating, like, how are you navigating some of the messages you have received? How are they impacting you now? And what is it that you may need new or different that might not even exist yet?
Mm.
Because previous generations did not have certain tools that this generation has now to kind of ask certain questions differently. So that's more like the larger framing of something that we're talking about on this level, but that's what makes me think of what are the messages we have received that formed our identity, how we interact with each other, how we see the world, how we build who we are, how we perform. Are we being authentic or are we performing? How do
Mm.
we create a space where we're more authentic and can be open and honest without it feeling like, attack, you're attacking me? I'm not attacking you.
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
I want to have a conversation.
Mm.
And
Mhm.
maybe the resistance you feel is because you've never had to go to that place before. This is your very first time and you thought everything was okay. Because I thought everything was okay with my identity until I had and I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
I got to go back to the drawing board of me.
Wow. You just said so much. And Tiela, I can sit here and talk to you for three
All day.
hours, but let's get to and so I told you, I'm like, what three questions do we need to pinpoint? So let me get to those three questions. So, in your opinion, how can educators and healthcare providers uplift Black girls' identity? So I'm very thankful that you mentioned identities. So here we are.
Yes.
Yes.
One, the first, genuinely on my heart, the first thing that comes to mind, and I had a conversation yesterday and I really asked the question, have we been taught how to listen?
Mm.
You know,
Tell
we
us a
could
little
say,
bit more about that because the first question was, I mean, the first thing that went through my mind is, I mean, yeah, in studies, especially if you studied communications, you learn about active listening. So tell me a little bit about what you mean, like, have we really been taught how to listen? Because even though we might study it academically, I don't think that really means that we learned how to listen. Mm.
our experiences, we have different experiences, right? And I've been questioning myself, have I been listening? Sometimes do I listen to others through the lens of my experience, which can be very limiting, respectfully limiting. There's some things I may not have experienced, some things I haven't done. And so I'm big on mind, like mind, body, connection. And so
Mm,
when I'm listening to someone, what am I listening with? Am I listening with my ear? Am I listening with my whole body? Am I listening with my this right? When things come up, and then how does
mhm,
that impact how I listen, how I'm
mhm,
receiving the information that someone is telling me? So if I'm coming to a healthcare provider, one of the experiences that I've had, I didn't feel heard.
mm,
I'm expressing and I'm like, I'm expressing I have this great pain. Oh, it's just this. It kept getting dismissed. It kept getting dismissed. And I could not understand for the life of me. Why are you dismissing me? Before this becomes a gaslighting situation where you're saying, I'm just feeling this way. Cause cause we're angry black women. And so, am I listening through my anger? No, I'm actually telling you, I'm trying to be vulnerable, be open, and say, this is the issue. How
mm,
you can uplift me in this moment. One, learn to listen
yeah,
without, I don't know what you're listening with, but put that, like, that's that inner bias, the bias. You got to check whatever that is that's coming up for you, because
yep,
it sounds like you're getting ready to tell someone. And when
yes,
you're telling someone, before you even get to the point of telling someone, you need to be able to have listened so you know what to tell them. So
mhm,
what you're telling them is aligned with their experience, or what you're comprehending of their experience, right? If you're
mm,
not doing that, then you're not creating an uplifting situation. In school, as as a person who works with young people, oh, I can't stand my teacher. Da, 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 da. Oh, it's you. You have an attitude. You need to go
right,
fix that. Whoa, 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 whoa. Tell me more. What happened? Even that's asking better questions. Get your question. Maybe there's a line of coaching in coaching questions that needs to be aligned in, like, healthcare
mhm,
and education, so that you learn how to ask better questions that are humble instead of confrontational
yeah,
or diagnostic. You're trying to, oh, I think I know
right,
this, so I'm gonna inject me here to get you to tell me what I already. No, 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 no. You're not
mhm,
listening. And I love the video that came. Listen, Linda, listen.
yes, yes, no.
I am telling you, I'm being bullied in school. I'm being
Yeah,
picked on in school.
yeah,
I'm saying I'm having this experience. I done told this teacher done made light of it. They joked at me. And then, depending on if you have an experience of, as a girl, I've witnessed the differences if you have a male that you can trust or a female that you can trust, right? And
mm,
someone who look like you, even in that could be a harmful experience, right?
yeah,
So how can educators and healthcare providers uplift Black girls' identities? One, you could start with listening.
yeah,
And two, you could figure out how to ask better questions, because it will
mhm,
actually get you the answer you need to provide the support that if you're willing to, if you're looking to provide it, then it will provide it. Versus if you're coming from knowledge, I know I read a book and this is what the symptom looks like and I'm checking off this, you're losing. That is a
mm,
guide. That's a guide for you to be like, I'm based on what I've studied. These are some things. Let me ask some questions so I can really get clarity on if this is what it is, instead of making assumptions and projecting those assumptions onto, oh, because you're Black, that's what it is.
mm, mhm. Wow. There's a cajillion things going through my mind right now.
Mm,
So right now is discerning the difference between counseling and coaching. So please hold on to that, pinpoint that.
mm.
I want to make another point. Some people are going to be listening to this through podcasts. So when you said something like when you listen and when the like make that sound, what you did
Body.
was your body
Yeah, my
contracted, right?
shoulders folded, or pulled back, or you take that deep breath and you feel like you're on a ride of a roller
Mhm.
coaster and you feel your chest about to, what is happening in your body, the physical sensations as you are listening to someone speak.
And I love the idea of listening with your body because I think that there's a gift in the knowledge. So let's just say, you studied healthcare for however many years. So, you do have that wisdom, that academic wisdom, but at the end of the day, we are really all the same. And so I think let's just go back to children, and children might ramble on and on like, oh, I'm just thinking about one particular kid right now who I have. Oh, my parents, they all we did was go to the park, and I'm tired of going to the park, and they won't let me watch this show, they won't let me watch that show. And mind you, he's in third grade, right? Now, if I were just taking my what I, first of all, we barely even really learned this in school. This has nothing to do with speech therapy specifically. So, what can I really tell him from my academic standpoint? Nothing. But I just sat and I listened to him, and I'm like, oh, this kid feels unseen. This kid feels like he doesn't have any autonomy. So, what can I do in this session to help him feel seen, to help him feel autonomous, to help him feel like he has some sort of say in his life? Would you agree?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
So, what
Um,
would you say? And I'm so sorry to cut across. Please
no,
go ahead.
please. No, go
Okay.
ahead.
So, what would you say is the difference between counseling and coaching? And what are some questions that you would recommend that we ask?
So coaching, I ain't diagnosing nothing. That's like off the top of my head. I ain't diagnosing nothing. I ain't saying you have this, that, and the third, and the third. That's not what I'm doing.
Mm,
Right. So I think with counseling or therapy, there is this medical science, like the medical science brain thinking about that piece that goes into that, that I don't do in coaching. Coaching is simply questions. Like I literally in my, how I say is I am inviting everyone to take an opportunity to meet themselves. I think we've been running around off the self, that been running around in second nature, the autopilot. I know how to answer this. Blah, 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 blah. When I say take an opportunity to meet yourself, I'm asking questions that you may not have thought about, or I'm listening to you share something and I'm asking you a question for the first time based on like, oh, this sounds like you've been neglecting yourself. Like that's
mm,
like, what does self-care look like for you? And sometimes even asking someone that question, what do you mean self-care? I'm like, exactly.
yeah.
Let's talk about that more. Because that gives me an idea of what your relationship is in relationship to yourself and what might be missing or being neglected that you may not even be aware of. So for me, I'm not diagnosing nothing.
Hmm.
I'm just simply asking you some questions in the same way we have you have what you've learned and being like, thinking about different thinking styles. This sounds like you depersonalization, or this sounds like,
Hmm.
this is where your critic is coming up, right? So I'm really introducing to people to having a relationship with themselves.
Having a relationship with themselves. Yes, yes. All right, let's move on to the next question. So,
Yeah.
yes, in terms of psychological safety, what are common scenarios of how psychological safety is challenged amongst colleagues who identify as Black women? I am excited. Let me sit back in my seat for this one.
So
Yes, come on.
first, I want to
Mm,
start with the definition of psychological safety. This has been
please.
created by Amy Edmondson.
Mhm.
And psychological safety is a belief that no one will be punished or humiliated for speaking up with ideas, questions, concerns, or mistakes, right?
Say that one
Humanity.
more time for me, please.
Psychological safety is a belief that one will not be punished or humiliated for speaking up with ideas, questions, concerns, or mistakes.
Okay.
I'm I'm drop one mic right there for the humanity part of that definition, right? That definition has nothing to do with race, gender, your socioeconomic standing, where you're from, any of that, right? The
Mhm.
barriers to culture to having this is we're talking about cultural and societal norms that impact that, prejudice and bias, right? A fear of retaliation. So when we want to speak up and do for ourselves, slavery was a great example of Harriet Tubman needing a shotgun to ensure freedom happens, right? Because if not, the fear will keep folks back from striving forward for freedom. Lack of inclusivity, so not feeling like you're going to be like you're not included in an environment, right? You get othered really quickly and then toxic work environments, right? So the question, what are common scenarios of how it's challenged amongst colleagues who identify as Black women, is the first one I think of is that, who am I? I'm not educated enough. I'm not smart enough. This can't have been me who did this. This can't have been me who said this. What's your credentials? What do you know? Like, you get questioned a lot about what you know when you went through. Let's be honest. Okay. If you went through school and you went and you got that degree at the end and you stood at the end of that day, yes,
Yes.
that qualified you.
Yeah.
Right? No
Mm.
different than anybody else. Then you went, got a job, had some experience that qualifies you. You were hired, so it qualifies you, right? So the constant, excuse me, the
Mm-hmm.
constant having to explain myself, the constant having to explain how you got to that, how you got to prove, right? The constant proving of how you got to where you at, that creates a psychological unsafe environment for Black women.
Mm-hmm.
um, Not being trusted, always being questioned. Um, how about when you advocate for yourself, or you got to negotiate and you're not being paid your worth, and you go to negotiate that and they create a harmful environment for you, right? You should be able to not be humiliated and bear or be told, oh, that's just, that's what it is. And then when you come back with data, proof, and facts, the psychological safety again is compromised because you have it, and now fear of retaliation might pop up. Who do you think you are? So those are some scenarios that come off the top in thinking about
Mm. Yeah. The other scenarios I'm thinking about are other workplace microaggressions. And just like what you said, feeling like you're being othered. Let's just say you're the only Black woman in that space and speaking out about it.
Yep.
Yes. Another thing that's coming to mind, there's a colleague in speech pathology, and she said she's been in the field since the 90s. And she said, especially when she was starting out, people thought she was the paraprofessional
Mm.
and
Yeah.
treated her as a paraprofessional, even though she was probably the most qualified woman in the building
You can
to
have
treat
doctor in
children in
front of your
special
name and
education.
they go miss
Yeah. Mm.
little things like you're talking about.
So, what about Black girls? Just to wrap this up, how can
Yeah.
we be better advocates for Black girls, and what are some common scenarios of psychological safety pertaining to Black girls?
Being in school. Being in school, especially when we're looking at power dynamic. For me in school, so I'm looking at a power dynamic. As an adult, then you slap the title behind it. That's a whole hierarchical thing, right? You come into an experience and you have a young Black girl who's saying she's going through something, and you keep dismissing her. You're not making space for her to be heard, and or you're allowing it. You've seen it, but they're just playing around. You're too sensitive.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Or when I get angry or somebody actually does physically violate, like physically have young girls who say, I've been physically violated. I went and I hit back and I got suspended for 3 days.
Mm-hmm.
And I go, what happened to the other person? Oh, they're still in school.
Mm-hmm.
All right. That's definitely psychological unsafe, right? Like, you're going to come back. You got to come to school, and you got
Yeah.
to keep coming into an environment that is harmful for your mental and emotional, and let alone your physical well-being.
Mm.
So for me,
Mm.
I think one thing I do want to say that I love that's being challenged, that I love when I speak to some of my Black, I don't care, miss. I don't care if I get in trouble. The teacher told me I couldn't go to the bathroom. My mama told me to go to the bathroom when I have to go. So I
There
got
you
up and
go.
I walked out of the class.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I snap. You won't say, "Oh, you can't do that." They're breaking the rule. The rule is broken. That's
Yeah.
why they got up and went to the bathroom. That's a human physiological thing. I got to go to the bathroom, and I don't want my class, and all these different kind of,
Right.
again,
Right.
that authority
Power.
stuff from being,
Right.
and you start
Yeah.
acting in that way, right? So what are you gonna put? Fight, flight, freeze, or fawn? They're not gonna fawn, right? If they freeze, they might urinate on themselves,
Mhm.
right? If they fight and throw something at you, like they get in trouble. So let them flight out the classroom and go use the bathroom.
Yeah.
Excuse
I
me. Go
like
ahead.
how you spoke about it in terms of trauma responses as well, because that you
We could
know,
have a whole nother hour of a podcast.
I mean, honestly, I mean, can I have you back? Because yeah, honestly,
Yeah.
yeah, that is very traumatizing. So, Tiela, thank you for sharing your insights. What changes would you like to see?
Ooh, the biggest. Ooh, the change that I would like to see is just this level of getting. It's a humanity thing, and I think it's inner wise. Face what you're uncomfortable with, so it can help you be better. But burying the uncomfort, running from it, avoiding it, acting like it doesn't exist, and creating another narrative in your head to suppress that one is not good. So if I
Mm,
really saw like this level of asking questions and getting support, and it's okay to feel, it's just being mindful on how you act on your feelings because there are consequences, right? So I just want people to get more comfortable with embracing their feelings and being open and honest. This is how I feel, so it could give you a point of direction in how you can move. So once we have emotional intelligence, if emotional intelligence was pushed in schools like everything else, we'd actually be a better society. People would have a
mhm.
better understanding of themselves and what triggers them and when they get around others. And then if we were having that type of energy cultivated, it would I could see you know what? Accountability. And it don't feel so bad. Response ability would be different in how you could respond in situations. More peace.
I love your play on words. So thank you. That's definitely your poet, your poet. So can you tell us a bit about where we can find you if we want to learn more about you, your brand, and also reach out to you for coaching?
Yes, you can follow me on Instagram. My first name, I got two. So if you want the more the poet me, it's just my first and last name, Tiela Grimes. And you can also follow the Inner Uplifter. That's spelled all regular. THEINNERUPLIFTER at Instagram, just to stay in tune with the work that I'll be doing. And follow me on LinkedIn. Check out my website, tielagrimes.com. Book a 30-minute discovery call with me if you're looking for some support or just want to have a speaker or whatever and you need that. I am here to give back the best way I can in this realm.
Thank you so much, Tiela, for your time. Thank you so much. And thank you, everybody, for joining us, watching the replay, listening to the podcast. And we will see you next time.